I'd like to take you through my experience with fabrics. So when textiles are made, it all starts with fabrics. Fabrics themselves are an extremely rich and interesting area. You first have a fiber. Now fibers can come from many sources, such as natural, being cotton, synthetic, such as rayon. Rayon is produced from wood pulp. The engineering behind the process is that the pulp is treated with caustic soda to become an alkali cellulose. After another few steps, we get what's known as a dope, which is a sort of viscous substance. And that's probably how it got the name viscose. It's then pushed through this spinneret that produces these individual strands, which are then set into acid, which neutralizes them. And that's how you get rayon yarn. So when fibers are spun into yarn, it's very important to measure, for example, the fineness of yarn. This will determine its quality, its price, and its use. For example, with cotton, we measure the number of 840 yard hanks that are in 1 pound of weight. Therefore, the more such units, the lighter and therefore finer the yarn. For example, when you go to the linen store and you see a 200 count Egyptian cotton bed sheet, you know what that means. It means that there are 200 840 yard units of that thread that weigh a pound, and that's a very precious yarn, which is why that sheet is so soft. So from fibers we move on to yarn, and yarn is used to make fabric. There are two ways to make fabrics with yarn: weaving, which is seen in lots of shirts and pants, and knitting, which is common in t-shirts and sweaters. In wovens, we see there are different patterns that can be achieved. For example, a twill is when you get these diagonal lines, and that's achieved in the weaving, whereby each succeeding row is offset slightly in one direction, which creates this diagonal effect when you look at it. On the other hand, in a satin fabric, we have a luster to it, but no diagonal necessarily, because we have 4 loops being skipped and only the 5th one looping in a 4x1, for instance. When the loops are skipped in this fashion, the continuity of the yarn reflects light more wholly, whereby in a 1x1 there'd be continuous crisscrossing, which would create a diffracted reflection of light. Now, another area that was very interesting to me was the processes that happen in this entire world of fabrics. If we look at weaving more closely, I found the Jacquard process to be absolutely fascinating. I discovered the amazing Jacquard technique while I was sourcing fabrics in South India in the state of Tamil Nadu. These pictures here are from a small power loom in the city of Salem. The Jacquard loom was invented more than 200 years ago, and it was the first programmable loom and one of the earliest such machines overall. Actually, it inspired Charles Babbage when he created his analytical engine, which is considered the world's first computer. I encourage you to check out a model of that actually at the Science Museum, which is nearby. So basically, the interesting thing about this loom is that it allows one to weave very detailed and intricate patterns that almost resemble embroidery, such as can be seen in this photo here. How it works is that each warp, which are the lengthwise threads or yarn, are controlled separately so that when each weft is inserted, weft are the widthwise yarn, you can control every single warp yarn, whether it should be lifted up or down, and thereby you can create these fine patterns. The processing of fabrics also was a very rich area. In printing, we had several different techniques. Rotary printing is a high output technique which is useful in full coverage fabrics. I was exposed to this technique while in the eastern state of Gujarat, where I was developing polyester fabrics for our customer, American Eagle. The rotors, made of nickel, are first etched with a laser-based machine so that the open pores allow the dye to pass through in that particular pattern. This is called screen making. Each rotor is then mounted onto the belt and is responsible for printing its one color onto the fabric. From a design point of view, I observed how a higher pressure would create thicker, more blotchy prints. Whereas if you wanted finer, sharper lines, you would have to lower the pressure. It was interesting to learn why the mills required our print repeats to be 25.25 inches or multiples thereof. And that was explained by the engineering as shown here. Thank you.